By this time, you've been working on your own Spyral notebook, and you might be thinking, where can I go next with this project? So for this video, we're going to look at a couple examples of different ways to use Spyral notebooks to share your insights. Let's take a look. So what we're looking at right now is a Spyral notebook that's similar to what you'll do. You'll write more than this. This is a very bare bones example I've given you, just to give you an idea of the kinds of things to include. But it's going to look similar to yours, where you'll have a code block, then a text block, and just go back and forth. But there are other ways to engage with this particular tool. Let's say I want to do a larger research project, like maybe you want to use Spyral for your final project in this class, or do a different project in another class, and you wanted to do more engaged research. Well, here's an example of that. This is an example of a notebook analyzing organization in the gaming industry. And if you look at it right now, it looks like an article. There's an abstract. There's even images. Remember, this is a rich text editor. You can add in source code, you can add in images. But in some ways, you could be thinking, why not use a website? Why is this on Spyral? Why can't I just make an article in Word and send it off to be published? Well, if we keep on going, we'll see examples of why. So this is an IMRAD paper, meaning it goes through the scientific method of introduction, and it has methods and analysis. So for those of you in the sciences and in organizational studies, which would include business and finance, this may look familiar. So we have the introduction, and then we get into the background, so the literature review, yada, 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 and methodology. And so here's where we get interesting. And you're thinking, that's a lot of text. That's different than what you wrote. This person is merging the traditional IMRAD, introduction, methodology, results, analysis, and discussion, into Spyral. So we get to the methodology, and we'll see, oh, this person did data scraping. And so they're scraping with Python, scraping off of the web to get this information. Look at headlines and how they're interacting with organization and labor. Like, okay, look, here's our first code block, and but that's a different code than the JavaScript we were using for Spyral. What's going to happen? If I try to run it, you see there's an error. What's going on there? Is this a bad example? I would say it's actually a good example because it's using Spyral in a different way. When you work with code, there are actually two ways to use that code. One way is to actually run it, to have where the code does what it was made to do. The other way is to display it with its annotations, to say, here's what I did. See, here's an annotation. That's part of that literate programming too. It's not just describing it and analyzing it. It's also saying in natural language, what does it do, and annotating it. And that's a way where you can share your code with other researchers. That's what this is doing, is it's going through in a very open way. Here's my methodology. I did data scraping. Here's literally the code I used. And Spyral can be good for that because it can't run Python. It runs JavaScript. And so we have Python here, but it's kept so we can see it. Same goes on when we're scraping from Google and doing more text scraping. So this is actually having where the code block shows the code without running it because it's not meant to be run. It's meant to display because this would work in a different area. But then we keep going down, data cleaner. So what we're seeing here, what you're watching in real time here, is the different code needed to scrape. Scraping means to pull down from the internet so that I can use it to build a corpus, a body of text. And then this is the code that cleans that text. Remember, OCR isn't always that accurate. You need to clean the data. You can get the specific text you want. Even though it's unstructured data, you still need it cleaned. That's what this is doing. And so what you've seen there is, before we get to Voyant, that's the process that this researcher did to make the corpus creation, where you pull down by scraping, then you clean it so it's useful for both the machine to read it and for you to work with. Then we get to Voyant. And now it's going to look more like yours, isn't it? Where I have an introduction, this person's introducing it, then you can see that's maybe more familiar to you. I know you probably work with the language, but that's JavaScript, where we had Python up above. And so then we're getting at the topics analysis. So what we did there is, in an open way, this person said, here's what I did to get my corpus that I then fed into Voyant. And now they're showing their analysis. They're bringing the tool, and then they're making arguments with that tool. And moving on to another one, and other ones as figures. So it's working more like a classic research paper or article where the figures are annotated and then they'll be talked about in the text. See figure 1.7. And then we can go down. There's figure 1.7. That's what's being talked about up here. So this is very much a traditional way of going about a traditional IMRAD article, but using the power of a notebook to actually display the code and run it when it's JavaScript. What other ways could we work with Spyral in different ways to share our research? Where this one is more of a traditional way of sharing our research, let's look at an instructor sharing a sort of playground for people to work with. Alexander Huber is a digital humanist who works on the poetry of Thomas Gray. And that name might not be familiar, but you've definitely read stuff in high school. I bet you had elegy written in a country churchyard in your high school English textbook. This is that guy, Thomas Gray. Don't worry, I'm not going to read it to you. So what's going on in this notebook is the researcher, Huber, is going through the different ways you can use Spyral for his particular corpus. So he's already developed a corpus. He's been involved in the digitization of Thomas Gray's poems. And so he's going through and have a playground for you where he explains the corpus that's already loaded into Voyant and explains that he's going to assign a specific name for it so it's easier to work with. And then goes through the tools that are available, but doesn't analyze them like you're doing for your project. Instead, talks about what's interesting about this tool. What could we do about it? He's opened avenues for you as the user of this notebook, and that's kind of neat. So it's inviting me to kind of think through what do I want to work with in it and how I can go into Voyant and then access his corpus. So this is sort of that open and collaborative where he's providing a clean corpus. Remember, when we looked at this earlier one, how much work goes into that. So Huber's providing that so that I can then go in as that other researcher and benefit from that and build off it. And it's like that all throughout where these are given for us to work with and given ways to think about working with it. Where we can even go through the catalog and say, oh, which one do I want to see? Look at that one, and then it'll show it to me, and I can kind of think about it, and it shows me the document frequency. So this is a great example of someone doing work that enables other researchers, because in many ways, I know I talk about the infrastructure of digital humanities as in the tools themselves, Spyral, but there's also infrastructure in the sense of have people built within those tools ways that can help other researchers. There are people who have made cleaned corpora, that's a plural for corpus. They've made it where you can just download a text file and bring it. That's how I got that Lord of the Rings text file that I was using for my own textual analysis. So ways to think about it too is we use the tools to talking about how to use this tool to analyze a text. Voyant can be great for that. How to use a tool to share the text. Spyral can be great for that. But we can also think about how can I use this tool to build a collaborative space for others? And that's part of the values of digital humanities.